All right, so starting over, okay, right from chemistry. Skills you're going to have to be able to show me. Chemical equations. Chemical equations are weighted somewhat heavily. I'm not, well, heavily is maybe not the right word to use. Okay, there's certainly marks available there. Okay, significant marks available there on the final exam. In order to write chemical equations properly, you must review and be able to properly name and write the formulas for both ionic and molecular compounds. Okay, so you got to remember your swaps and drops. Okay, when do you use prefixes? When do you not use prefixes? When do Roman numerals apply? Okay, when do they not apply? Okay, so remember those multivalent metals that have more than one possible charge. Their ionic compounds get the Roman numerals. All right, so we got things like that we got to probably review. Okay, do you have lots of worksheets with naming on them? Yes, you do. Okay, if you're done them already, that's fine. Okay, just pick a couple, and you've also got keys on my website that you can check. Okay, and it's the same basically, guys, for any worksheet that we did in any unit. Right? Do a couple of problems from them, and if you can still do them and get them right with no problem, you still remember how to do that stuff, and you probably don't need to spend as much time on it. Okay, that's kind of how you find out here, and that's what you've been supposed to be doing over these first couple of weeks, is reviewing your notes and trying things that we haven't done for a while. Okay, and seeing which things you remember how to do. If you remember how to do them, you don't need to spend as much time on them. Okay, but if you sat down and tried to balance an equation and couldn't remember how, then that's probably something you need to work on. Or you couldn't remember how the mole equation worked. Okay, something like that. Okay, or you didn't get the work energy theorem question right that you tried. Okay, then that's something you need to review. Okay, but if you looked at a picture of the cell and you went, yeah, I know what every single one of those parts are, you probably don't need to spend any more time on that. Okay, everybody follow me? Okay, so that's kind of how you can decide how best to use your time. It does you no good to study the stuff you already know. Okay, if you already know it well, don't spend any time on it. I know some people like to because it makes them feel good. Like, yeah, I really know this stuff. But then you're only going to really know that stuff, and you're not going to know the other stuff. Okay, and that's not going to help you. There's more than just that stuff on the final. Okay, so you got to be able to write formulae and names. Okay, you got to be able to predict. So to predict, you got to go over your reaction types. Okay, we had synthesis, and we had decomposition, single and double replacement, and combustion reactions. Okay, they were all quite different. Okay, just make sure that you can identify them just from their reactants. Remember, if we're predicting, that's all you're going to get. Okay, and there are 2 prediction problems. Okay, on your final exam. I think it's 2. Okay, so make sure that you can identify the reaction types from just their reactants, and then predict what the products should be. With replacement reactions, that was pretty easy. You basically were just switching things. Okay, for combustion reactions, you just memorize that they're CO2 and water. Okay, it's the decomposition and the synthesis where things can get a little bit weird, especially with the special elements, the ones that are when they're by themselves are a 2 or a 4 or an 8. You guys recall those? Okay, I gave you a color version, or I had you highlight on your periodic table which ones those were. On your final exam, you get a new periodic table. You cannot bring yours in. Okay, you get a new periodic table, and those same things are highlighted. In fact, it's exactly the same. It's just Peter's got his right here. So I had you guys highlight them on here. On the final exam, they're highlighted for you, and there's a color code at the top. Okay. Oh no, you didn't highlight that, did you? I gave it to you in black and white, and you had to highlight. It's in color on the final, okay? And the color code is there, so you'll know which ones are which, okay? But you got to make sure you look at the periodic table, okay? Don't just assume you know. Just double check, right? It takes only a second to do that. Okay, so predict and identify types, okay? Be able to balance reactions, also very important. What do you usually balance last? Oxygen. Okay, and basically every type that we went over, oxygen was balanced last. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, mole calculations. Okay, got to be able to use little n equals little m over big M. Okay, and Avogadro's number. Okay, 6.02 times 10 to the 23. That number is on your final exam on a formula sheet. Okay, as is the mole equation. Okay, you don't have to memorize them; they're on there for you. You just have to remember what each part is. I didn't label them and go n equals number of moles and all that. You have to remember what each part of the equation stands for. Okay, so mole calculation certainly important. The stuff from the structure of the atom, that first unit where we talked about the important people and what they did and stuff. There's very little of that. Okay, you know, basically you need to know the really important people like maybe Dalton, okay, because he came up with the atomic theory, which is kind of important. And then, you know, anyone that had to do with the nuclear model, like Rutherford and his gold foil and whatever, you know, basically really important people. I'm not going to be like, who discovered the proton and the electron? Yeah, that's less important. Okay. All right, so we got to remember little n, like we said, equals little m over big M. Okay. Cells, we talked, I mean, half of our second unit was on cells. Okay, so is there a diagram of a cell on the final exam? Yes. Okay. Will you have to identify the parts and say what they do? Yes. In the multiple choice, not in the written this time. Right? So one of the questions might be, you know, what's the function of structure number 2 versus what is structure number 2? Okay, it might go either way. The other stuff we need to know about cells, cell transport. Okay, so osmosis, diffusion, and active transport again. Okay, we got to know the surface area and volume again. What's the effect of those? If surface area gets really small compared to volume, the cell's in trouble because diffusion is really slow. Okay, we got to kind of review all of that kind of stuff. Look at that lab with the cubes that we did, okay, in order to review that. Okay, so we got to know parts and functions, size and functions. So that's what we just talked about, the surface area volume thing. And guys, this is just kind of a quick overview. I've got a big package that I'll give you here. Okay, that's got some old exam questions on it and kind of a guide and stuff on it. This is just a quick kind of thing here. Okay, cell transport, like we said, that one's going to be important. Not the small ones, the big three. Okay, the big three are the really important ones: osmosis, diffusion, and active transport. Those are the ones we really got to know. How can we tell them apart? Osmosis only transports water, and active transport uses energy, right? And diffusion basically does everything, right? It transports everything, okay? And it can work anywhere, right? It doesn't cost anything, all that kind of stuff. So just keep those in mind, those characteristics, okay, for identification. Because the questions will be like the ones that were on your unit exam, where it was, here's a situation, which cellular transport process is going on there, explain why. Okay? All right, then we talked about plants. Okay, so we went into multicellular organisms, so structure of the plant's obviously going to be important. Okay, you know, the palisade layer and the stomates and all that kind of stuff. Transport in plants, huge. Okay, if there's one thing in the bio unit that's probably bigger than anything else, it's probably how plants work. Okay, tropisms, transport, hormones, okay, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so how they function, how they transport, right? So did we do a lab on this? Okay, if we did a lab on something, you can bet there's going to be stuff on the final about it. Okay, so we got to look at, you know, how that process of water being a polar molecule combined with osmosis, okay, allows the water to be brought up through the xylem. Okay, and the sugar comes back down through the phloem, right? Okay, that kind of stuff. Right. Okay, and then, oh, so we're back into physics already here. Okay, motion of objects, and like I said, guys, this is just a quick review. Obviously, you know, I'm not going over absolutely everything here. Okay, motion of objects, so V equals D over T, right? Probably in the multiple choice, I would think, for that, because it's kind of easy. Acceleration, probably a problem to do with that, okay, on the final exam. And then graphing. Okay, certainly there'll be some graphs. In fact, I would say if there's something other than work energy theorem from physics that's weighted heavily, it's graphing. Okay, graphing is big. There's graphs in the multiple choice that you have to interpret. Okay, and there's graphs in the written response that you'll have to interpret. You do not have to construct any, okay, but you'll have to do some interpretation. Right, so just like what we did in the physics unit, maybe I show you a completed graph and say, tell me what's going on in section A, B, C, and D. Okay, so you'd say, well, it's traveling at a constant velocity because it's a inclined line on a position time graph, or it's accelerating because it's a curve on a position time graph, or it's accelerating because it's a diagonal line on a velocity time graph. Okay, things like that. You're gonna have to go over your graphing notes. Okay, watch the podcast on that. Make sure you really know that well, and look at the two labs we did. Okay, we did the graphing lab with the constant velocity stuff, and then we did the acceleration lab, the need for speed one, okay, with the cars. All right, so make sure that you go over those. All right, so motion of objects, V equals d over t. Okay, so there'll be problem solving to do with these, but the problem for V equals d over t is probably in the multiple choice. Okay, graphing in big capital letters. Okay, make sure you know how to do that, because if you do, the marks are quite easy, actually. Okay, the graphing questions, if you read them carefully, so that is, you see what kind of graph it is. Okay, position versus time, velocity versus time work different. Okay, if you know what type of graph it is, and then you shouldn't have any trouble. Okay, could you be asked to do a slope calculation? Yeah, so you better go over y equals mx plus b or rise over run, whichever you're more comfortable with. It'll work. Either one will work. Okay, and then energy. Okay, energy was a huge part of Unit 3. It was the second half of it, really. Probably a little bit about the types, because we had those 2 days right at the beginning where we talked about chemical energy, nuclear energy, magnetism, electricity, all that kind of stuff. For multiple choice kind of recall stuff, that's the kind of energy stuff that'll be in there. Okay, in terms of calculations and problem solving, okay, work energy theorem. Okay, work is a change in energy. And remember, the first thing you have to do is decide, is it kinetic energy that's changing or potential energy that's changing, so you can set it equal to the right thing. Do you have lots of solved examples of that? Yes, okay? And you can watch solved examples of that in like 5 different podcasts. I think I have work energy theorem part 5, up to part 5 on there, okay, on YouTube. So have a look at those. Same thing goes for a mole equation. If you're struggling with that, remember that we had 3 days in a row where I solved one of each kind of mole equation problems. Okay, so it's probably worth your while to watch at least one of those just for a quick review. I don't think you have to watch the whole lesson, just watch the examples, okay, so that you see each type done again in case you need to refresh your memory. Okay, conservation of energy. So EI equals EF. Okay, we had a roller coaster question on the unit exam. Okay, probably something like that on the final. Okay, anytime you have something going downhill, basically it's the law of conservation of energy. Okay, as long as it's talking about the top and the bottom. Okay, from that perspective. Okay, thermodynamics. Okay, the laws of thermodynamics, first law, second law, because we've talked about those in 2 units, right? Okay, we talked about them in Unit 3 and again in this unit in global systems and energy. So they're probably worth knowing because they might be part of questions where you have to do some explaining, right? So in a written response item where it says explain what's going on here, you might want to refer to, well, the first law of thermodynamics says energy can't be created or destroyed, so the energy must be going here, okay, or something like that. Okay, everyone kind of follow me there? Right, they might be something you integrate into something else, and there might be some multiple choice questions just straight out asking which law is it. Okay, so worthwhile to go over those. Okay. And then this last unit, climate and energy. Certainly there's going to be questions just like what were on your unit exam. Practical application type questions. The Quincy question on the unit exam was an example of a practical application question. Okay, look at the 3 methods of heat transfer. Okay, the what happens to energy when it strikes a section of prairie near Okotoks question was what happens to energy. Absorption, conversion, reflection, albedo gets worked in there, okay, all of that kind of stuff. So, okay, those are the things you need to go over. Certainly you need to know components of climate and factors affecting, because you could get a question about that stuff as well. Okay, so components and factors, okay, heat transfer, jet stream, okay, latent heat, Coriolis effect, okay, all of that kind of stuff. Probably more of this components and factors and jet stream and stuff like that's probably going to be more multiple choice type stuff. Okay, we said the practical application stuff is in there. Climatograms, same thing you were expected to do on the unit exam. Here's a climatogram. What biome does it fit with? Okay, that could be multiple choice. It could be written response. Okay, and I would probably expect a heating curve question as well. Okay, if there's specific heat, it would probably be multiple choice because it's pretty easy math. Okay, it'd probably be a multiple choice question, but okay, there probably is a latent heating curve question on this final exam. Okay, and then obviously there's biomes, okay, same as it was on your test. Multiple choice question, picture and description. Okay, make sure you can identify them. Okay, so I finished it up on the weekend here, guys, and I'll give you some details on it here. Okay, there's 50 multiple choice. 50. Okay, multiple choice questions. They're fairly evenly distributed in terms of number. Okay, like per unit, they're fairly evenly distributed, although the last unit has the least number of questions about it just because it's so short. Okay, bio might have 2 more questions than the others, and they are organized by unit. Okay, so there'll be a bunch of questions on chemistry, and then it'll say unit 2, and there'll be a bunch of questions on bio, then it'll say unit 3, a bunch of questions on physics. Okay, so there's not a lot of overlapping multiple choice questions in there. And I'm so glad Microsoft did those updates that make everything crash. Okay, in the written response, okay, there are 15 written response questions. So essentially, guys, it's 1.5 times the length of a unit exam, right? Your unit exams have generally had between 25 and 35 questions on them. This one has 50, okay? And your written parts have usually been around 8 or 9 questions. It's got 15, okay? Because you have 1.5 times as long to write it, okay? Marks-wise, obviously there's 50 marks for the multiple choice. There are 87 marks for the written. What part should you do first? Written. Definitely do the written part first. And I say that every semester I've taught this. So that's 31 times. Okay. Yeah, you're doing the math. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm old. And every time I say it, I walk down the aisles in the exam, and I see at least a third of people doing the multiple choice first. And oftentimes, those are the people who, at the end of the exam, have to leave something blank in the written. Okay, you do not want to be that person. Okay, do the written first. You can always rush the multiple choice. You cannot rush a written response item. All right. You have 2 hours to write it. There's no extra time after 2 hours. After 2 hours, you're done. Whether you're done or not, you're done after 2 hours. Okay? You should not have trouble finishing in 2 hours. That said, if you walk out after an hour, you have to stay for an hour. If you walk out after an hour, I don't think you did very well. Okay? I have had one person who walked out after an hour and 4 minutes who did well. But they were absolutely obnoxiously brilliant. Okay? Everyone else who's left after an hour has failed the test because you simply cannot complete it in an hour. Okay? If you do complete it, it's because you wrote yes for a 5-mark written response item several times. Okay? So yeah, you don't want to be in that situation. Take your time, do a good job, keep an eye on the clock. Okay? Other suggestion, read through it carefully first before you answer anything. Read through it carefully first. Okay? Have a look at things and go, okay, hey, I know how to do that question. I'm going to do that question first. Okay? Even if it's question number 4. Okay? If it's question number 4 and I don't know, whatever question number 4 is on, I don't know. Okay? And you say, well, I'm really good at that. I'm going to do it first. Do it first. Absolutely. Okay? Do the stuff you know how to do first because it is a confidence booster and you want confidence when writing a final exam. Okay? So do the stuff you know how to do first. Okay? Leave the stuff you don't know how to do for last. Trust me, it helps. Okay? I had to do that on my organic chem final in my second year of university. Okay? Sat down, read the test. Had an idea on how to do 6 of 30 questions. I did those 6 questions. I felt a little better about myself. Not that much. Okay. Then I tried some of the other ones. Okay. But at least I knew I was going to get the marks for the ones I knew how to do. Okay. And then I did, I think, 4 more. I think I told you guys this story. Yeah. Did 4 more. Yeah. Okay. But that's what you want to do. Okay. You want to make sure you do the stuff you know how to do first. Okay. You'll do better on this than I did on my organic chem final. Don't worry. Okay. I know you will because you can't possibly do worse than I did. Okay. But remember, everybody did bad on that one. Class average was 36. I got 37. That's how you pass university, guys. Do better than half the people. Okay, that's what the curve is all about. It sucks. Okay, so keep that stuff in mind. Bring yourself, like we said, same as always, bring yourself something that's a polite exam appropriate snack and something to drink that won't spill on the floor and make a sticky spot, okay, stuff like that, or that will make your fingers sticky, okay, things like that. You don't want any of that. Bring yourself 2 or 3 pencils that are already sharpened. I used to think that was self-evident, but apparently it's not, because I have had people come in with brand new pencils. They don't write very well that way. You should probably sharpen them before you come. Okay, so come with probably 3 of those and maybe a couple of pens. Okay, because some of the stuff, it's written, right? Just in the biology unit, you have to explain stuff. You probably want to write that in pen, but the calculation stuff, the chemistry stuff, you want to do that in pencil in case you need to erase anything. Okay, so bring both. An eraser, fresh batteries for your calculator. They tell you that already? Okay, bring fresh batteries for your calculator. In fact, put them in the calculator and check them before you come. Right? Because I'm going to walk around. I have to clear all your calculators before you can write the test. Right? So I'm walking around. I pick up your calculator and go to clear it. If it says to me, battery's low, please replace, I can't clear your calculator. So I tuck it under my arm and I go around and I clear all the other calculators. And then I walk to Ms. Weideman's office and I get a set of batteries and I put them in your calculator and I clear it and I take them out and I put your dead batteries back in and I bring your calculator back to you. You're going to be without your calculator for like 10 minutes. Okay? Is that a stress maker for you? Probably. Let's avoid that stress maker. Okay? Put fresh batteries in your calculator, right? So that you do not run into that problem. You're getting a fresh formula sheet. You're getting a fresh periodic table. There on the so when you get your test, okay, it'll have your name on the front, okay, top left corner, okay, it'll be in there, and then there'll be the nighthead and the triquetra, and then there's some instructions. Read the instructions, okay, and when you flip it over, that's where the multiple choice form is. It's on the back of the front page. So if you're looking for it, that's where it is. Okay, you'll probably want to pull the staple like you usually do, okay, and do your multiple choice in there last, okay. Right behind that is the periodic table and the formula sheet. Okay, they're the second page, back to back. Okay, formulas on the back, periodic table on the front, or vice versa. I can't remember which. Okay, that's where they are, second page. So you'll find them right away. Okay, and then there'll be the multiple choice questions, and then the written response, same kind of setup as your unit exams have been. All right. Yeah, that's all. Remember to leave your electronics in your locker. Okay, don't bring your cell phone, your iPod, or anything like that into the exam. The only electronics you can bring in is your calculator. Okay. How much studying should you be doing a day for the next little while? I was actually thinking that might even be a tad bit conservative, but okay. 2 or 3 hours is a decent start for sure. It's not just my test, right? You have other tests you have to study for. I'm not saying study 2 to 3 hours for science, okay? Okay. You have several exams to study for here, okay? But you should be looking at, okay, several hours a day here, guys, for the next little while. That's why you don't have regular class during exams, okay? You don't have regular class during exams so that you can study, not so that you can get extra shifts at work, okay? Or go skiing on the day you don't have a test. Okay, you should be studying on those days. Now, if you need to come in and ask questions, what do you do? Yeah, send an email to me, okay, and just ask, Mr. Coder, can I come in at this time? And I'll let you know if that'll work. Okay, most of the time the answer will be yes. Okay. If you're just in the school and you're just looking for me, look here first. If I'm not here, I'm hiding from you. Okay, and I'm probably in the photocopy room or something. Okay, just wait patiently, and I'll probably be back. We recommend, though, that unless you're specifically coming in for help, that you're probably not here. Okay, just because when there's people here, they tend to talk, and that's a distraction to people writing tests and whatever else. Okay, so if you're coming in, come in and see people for help, and then head on home. Okay. So I've already said make sure you look over your worksheets and your assignments, okay, your labs and things like that, because obviously if we took the time to do that stuff, it's important. Your notes package, obviously, hopefully you've been highlighting things along the way. It's never a bad idea to make up little like cards, like note cards, or to rephrase the stuff that you've highlighted into kind of your own summarized notes package. Okay, things like that are always good studied methods, okay, for committing stuff to memory and things like that. What should you do the night before this test? People are thinking, how many of you are thinking cram till 2 in the morning? Don't do that. That's not going to help you. Okay. The best thing you can do for yourself the night before you write this test is to get a good night's sleep, 8 hours. Okay. If you pull an all-nighter, you're not going to do well. Take it from a guy who's pulled a bunch of all-nighters and not done well afterwards. Okay. You definitely want to get a good night's sleep, because you can only drink so much coffee or Red Bull or whatever. Okay, and usually you get a sugar crash right in the middle of your test when you're relying on that. So you don't want to have that happen. Get a good night's sleep. Get a good breakfast. Okay, black coffee and cigarettes is not a good breakfast. Okay, yeah, have something healthy. All right, and then come in ready to go. All right. The other thing is try not to think too much about the subject material in the half hour before the test. You need to actually give your brain a rest the half hour before the test. People tend to try and do all this last minute cramming in that last half hour. You are not going to retain any of that. Okay? Because you're only going to be committing that to short-term memory. And your short-term memory lasts for a few minutes. That's when people get that sensation of blanking. You ever had that sensation? You open up the test and you're like, oh God, I don't remember any of this. That's what cramming gets you. Okay? You don't want to do that. All right, so just relax, talk to your friends about something other than the test for the half hour before the test. Okay, just chill out and relax before the test, because that's better for you. Okay. That's all I can think of for right now. I'll give you guys your package here, and that might remind me of a couple of things here. So you've got this review package in front of you. Okay, for anything that essentially I could key, okay, I have. So the answers are the bold-faced letters or whatever. Okay, so that includes the balancing numbers down here for the ones that asked for balancing. But anything that was a explain this or write a detailed that, obviously I didn't key that. Okay, there's no answer for that. You'll have to look that up in your notes. Okay. Okay, so down here we've also got the solutions for the chemical reactions, things like that. So if you're not wanting to see those, don't look at them. That's all I can say. Okay, at least then you'll know if you've done them right or not. Okay, there's some mole equation ones in there. Okay, because we said that was also going to be something that was important. Okay, and there's a couple of things here. Write a detailed description of this. The number 14 there about the structure of water. Obviously, that's the polar nature of water stuff, and that came up in 2 units, so not a bad idea there. 13, I think you could maybe cross off the detailed summary part. Okay, maybe just a summary, like Dalton, Rutherford, Bohr, or something. I don't know, just something a little less than that is probably. We don't need a detailed summary. You have that in your notes. Okay. And then there's a couple of some of these are old exam problems that I've taken off of other exams, and so they're in there. And then you got some more balancing stuff, and then you got some life science stuff. So you got the bio, you got the cells. Okay. For some reason I didn't key that. I'm not sure why. I think I just forgot. Okay, and then you got the physics questions there. Again, every single one of those problems is an old exam question. Okay, so it gives you a pretty good idea of level of difficulty. Okay, there's a graph on here that it asks you to analyze. Okay, all that kind of stuff. And then there's some global system stuff, including climatogram. And then underneath that are the key concepts and skills. So the last page there has, okay, key concepts and skills for each unit. So the key concepts are the things that you need to be able to understand and explain and possibly apply, okay, in a written response item, or that could just be tested in the multiple choice as kind of recall or things like that. Okay, that's what the key concepts are about. Okay, the skills are the things you're going to have to be able to demonstrate. Okay, so skills for the first unit are naming compounds, okay, writing chemical formulas, balancing reactions, writing reactions, doing mole equations, okay, things like that. Those are the skills that you'll have to demonstrate on the final. So it gives you the kind of things you need to look over for sure. Okay, and then for the second unit, okay, our key concepts: cell theory. Okay, there were 3 points to the cell theory, and that could be a multiple choice item. Okay, cell anatomy, label the parts, tell me what they do. Okay, plant anatomy, tissues functioning, okay, hormones, growth and development, that it could include tropisms. Okay, you might want to write that beside it because it doesn't really specify, but okay, that would include tropisms. Cellular transport, the big three there, obviously, the modes of nutrition, chemoheterotrophs, photoautotrophs. Okay, cell size, that's the surface area volume, multicellularity. Okay, then you need to be able to apply your knowledge of cell structure. That's the skills, okay, for Unit 2. Apply your knowledge of these things. So in a situation like you got on your unit exam with the slugs, right? Yeah, you had the question about the slugs on the front page. Why was that bad? That's an apply your knowledge kind of question. Okay, that's where you have to recognize, oh, it's osmosis because it's the salt lake and whatever, right? So that's apply your knowledge type of stuff. Okay, Unit 3, key concepts: scalar versus vector. You definitely need to know which things are scalar and which things are vector, because in a written response item it might say calculate velocity. If you don't remember if velocity is vector, you might solve it wrong. Okay, so make sure you know which ones are vector, which ones are scalar. The systems, open, closed, and isolated, okay, and the laws of thermodynamics, okay, because those are going to be things in the multiple choice or that could be part of an explanation for something else. Skills you got to show me: graphing, okay, read, interpret, probably not so much construct, just read and interpret and calculate, okay, from there. Let's replace construct with calculate. Okay, problem solving, we already talked about those: V equals D over T, acceleration, work, energy, and conservation of energy. Okay, and then for Unit 4, okay, soils, ecosystems, biomes, climate, okay, components and factors, heat transfer, specific heat capacity, latent heats. Okay, so those are all the key concepts. The skills: problem solving. Okay, I've got climatograms on there twice. That should be a big hint. And then apply your knowledge of heat transfer. So a question kind of like the Quincy maybe. Okay, I would say if you got one that was about cold weather, you might get one now about hot weather. Maybe. Possibly. Okay. All right. Questions you guys have? I know it's a lot to absorb in one class. Okay. Well, tonight look it over so that tomorrow you got questions to ask. Okay. We still got about 5 or 6 minutes left in class here, so you can kind of look through that thing. Maybe, just make a couple notes in there about, okay, I want to ask Coder about this, or this is something I should look over tonight, or whatever. Okay. So that you're making a plan.